president from Missouri. And although I knew neither of my grandfathers, because they both died before I was born, they were both Harry Truman Democrats. They supported a party that they had grown up in for ancestral reasons that still, at that time, 65 years ago, could be led by a man who stood up for muscular international assertion of American interests. And leading in those years, we may have quarreled with this or that aspect of the Truman policy, but he led the anti-communist cause, led the cause of the free world. It's hard to imagine today's Democratic Party having been taken over by the hard left, exercising that kind of leadership. And within a few years of that 1946 speech, many parts of the then dominant New Deal coalition were beginning to split off. So much so that one of its adherents, another son of the Midwest, 18 years later, in the fall of 1964, provided us with some timeless wisdom. And as I campaigned doing more than 50 events for other candidates last year across our state when I was not on the ballot myself, I resorted to this wisdom of this speaker from the fall of 1964, when he said in October of '64, in a losing effort, that the issue in this election is whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a tiny intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives better than we can plan them ourselves. The speaker was often derided then and later as a washed-up B movie actor named Ronald Reagan. It's the same Ronald Reagan who had been a devotee of FDR and had campaigned for Harry Truman in his one and only national campaign for president 2 years later after the Iron Curtain speech, 1948. But through the 50s and 60s, Mr. Reagan came to understand that that party, the party of my grandfathers, had left him. And he watched, as the rest of us did, as the radical left took over that once great party and reduced it to one that would not even, in the current, in its current incarnation of presidential leadership, would not even affirm what all previous American presidents of both parties have always believed in, and that is a firm belief in American exceptionalism. Ronald Reagan believed in American secular humility. Reagan believed that we were divinely blessed among all the nations to have been a place here protected by two vast oceans from the warring factions that went on in the continent most of us came from. Protected by these oceans. That people would seek out this great expanse of God-loving people and ground and open spaces in North America to seek liberty. And you all recall the words of the Emma Lazarus poem that are inscribed in the pedestal of the Statue of Liberty, where the words go, "Send me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shores. Send these tempest-tossed to me." The words of that great, thrilling, inspiring poem don't say, send me your wealthy, privileged few, your landed gentry, your A students, your 36 scorers on the ACT. No, it's the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. That's who we Americans largely came from. Ordinary people who fled religious persecution in other lands to come here to this land of liberty. Today's Democratic Party doesn't want to view us as liberty-seeking individuals, but rather victims of aggrieved groups, where we can claim some sort of group status and embrace victimhood. That's not the American vision. Ronald Reagan and Abraham Lincoln believed in. And so it is left to us Republicans to stand up for those great principles of liberty that are timeless. And Reagan's statement from 1964, I repeat, in a losing effort that year, stands the test of time, because today and over the last 2 years in Washington until January, they had unchecked power, the House, the Senate, and the White House, and big majorities in both of those chambers. Their vision is that they are a tiny intellectual elite who does know better how to plan our lives than we do. Do you doubt that? No. Cap and trade, a conscious plan to double our energy prices, a war on fossil fuels, a moratorium on drilling that even after they lifted it is still effectively in place, a war on American energy production that we're now seeing the bitter fruit of as we return to the Carter years, and we risk another round and bout of stagflation, which some of us are old enough to remember. Healthcare. A belief that if you design a plan according to Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid and Barack Obama and Kathleen Sebelius's vision, that they can plan our health care better than we can. You know, the definitive answer to that was supplied by Missourians at our August primary, where we said, we will endorse the Health Care Freedom Act that Jane Cunningham proposed. We want to reserve to ourselves the right to direct our own health care.